All right. On verse 47, we were lied to earlier. No, we didn't write it down last week, and I forgot what verse it was, but we got the bright idea to go look at last week's video. So now we know we're on verse 47 this week. We're beginning with what we call, or what I'm calling, a new variable. There is a change up here. This is something different. And it's in verse 47, which says, Veha beged ki yiyeh vo nega za. It's either zera'at or zara'at. There's a vowel missing there. Beged zemer o beged rather. Peach team. Sorry, I butchered that as badly as I could. We start off with nega. This is a word we've had over and over again, but I want to go over it again because with this being a new variable, we're going to change the word that we use in English. So let me explain. Now let me sum up. There's too much. Anyway, this word is, if you recall, to strike of a blow, someone punching someone or hitting someone with something, specifically of beatings. It's even to be struck with calamities, whether it's, some angry mob burning down your town or something like that would fall under this word, as well as a mark or a spot in the skin, whether it's a scab or an eruption, zara'at. It's, those kind of things. Why? Because it breaks your skin. If you've got a scab, something has broken through your skin, whether it was you getting hit or illness in your skin breaking the skin, right? So this word is used for that. We've been using the word sore. I think that I know that I'm going to change that to lesion, because I think that lesion is the more proper medical word, although I am going to take this stuff to my doctor and ask her opinion, because maybe that's not the right word, but I'm going to change it for sure. So anyway, we've been using the word sore, and it has worked for us well, but now we're going to change it to mark. Does anybody know why? Well, because this is going to be something in an inanimate object. Sorry, I didn't want to come through my mouth there. It's not of a person anymore. We're going to talk about clothing and stuff like, leather and stuff like that. These are not live, breathing things. So we're going to change the word from lesion from sore, rather, to mark, M-A-R-K. It's a mark in something. I haven't come up with a better word. I probably will one of these days. Now, the other important word here is zemer. Zemer. Again, my rollies aren't working today. That's wool. That's all that means. And then in pishtim, that's linen. So wool and linen, that's where we're starting. So our verse says, in English anyway, and if there be a contagious mark in a garment of wool or in a garment of linen. I have a note here. Inanimate objects do not get sores. Thus, the word mark is being used here. So I've already actually said that. But notice here it says, if there be a contagious mark in a garment, comma, in a garment of wool or in a garment of linen. Now, this can be looked at two different ways, because it starts with in a garment, and then it says in a garment of wool or in a garment of linen. So that sounds like a garment or a garment of wool or a garment of linen, right? Sounds like three different things. Well, it kind of is, though the word for garment here is not necessarily something that you're going to wear, though it could be. It's a little more expanded in thought than that. Like well, we'll get into it, but a belt would be a good example, but you do wear that. But we're going to eventually get it, because that may be next chapter. I just did finish that last night, so all that's still in my head. I'm not sure if I'm mixing things here, but we are going to get into this very same thing, being in stone and being in wood and other things like that. So what I'm trying to say, I guess, in the end, is that the garment can be made of just about anything. So yeah, it is three things. All right, so let's talk about verse 48, which says, "Oh," remember that means "or" in English, like "oh." Anyway, "vi sheti," "oh," these are very important. "Oh" means "or." "Oh be'erev la pishtim vela zamer," "oh," 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 or "ve'or." O bechol melechet or. Okay, so you have vesheti. Okay, I read all kinds of nonsense about how, oh, we can't know what this word means. Oh, it's so obscure. I may have said this last week. I don't remember. But let me say it this week for sure. There are grammar rules for biblical Hebrew that have been lost over time because, well, I don't actually know why, but just part of that was the fact that so many countries tried so desperately to burn off stick in the fire anything that was written in Hebrew. So if there was a book of grammar, well, in this case, a scroll of grammar from back in the day, we've not seen one, right? So to try to figure out the grammar was very difficult. There is a man named Umberto Cassuto who studied the Ugaritic text and is he's passed on now, but was at one time considered the world's leading authority. Now, he took and studied all of that stuff and then compared it to the Hebrew text of that very same time period. He realized that it goes back that far and realized the grammars were all but identical. So now, because of his work, we know things about Hebrew grammar that were not known to the world in general up until just, what has it been, maybe 40, 50 years? Since Cassuto did that, if it goes back that far, I'm not even sure. I would think so, though, because he's been gone a while. So I think it's been 40 or 50 years since he published that work, and you really should get it. It's his commentary on the book of Genesis, because it does say Genesis. It's written in English, and on Exodus. It will really help you understand biblical Hebrew better than you've ever understood it before. Yeah, it's a little dry and it's a little tough at times if you've never been introduced to this stuff before. But just don't make the mistake of saying, well, I'm not going to go on until I understand this. Just pick up whatever you can and just keep moving forward, because he's going to say it in enough different ways that eventually you'll get it, which is a pretty good approach as far as I'm concerned. So don't stop reading. Don't start and stop because you got to learn this before you can move on to that. Don't do that. Just start on page 1 and work your way to the end. By the time you get to the end, you should have a pretty good grasp on it. At least half as much as you need to know when you finish Genesis, and then you go on to Exodus and do the same thing with it. And by the time you're through, you understand some Hebrew grammar, some Bible Hebrew grammar, like most don't. And I mean, I'm looking at books that are fairly new, written by guys who obviously know nothing about Cassuto and are still claiming that these words cannot be understood. Oh my knee. Anyway, listen, it's real simple. When you have a word that is obscure in the Bible, here's what you do. Here's how you figure it out. And it's real simple. Follow that word back to the root. The root will always give you the picture. If you're looking at something where your root does not give you the picture, go find a Gesenius lexicon. He is real good about doing that. Does he do it every time? No, but he does it most of the time. So follow the word back to its root. That gives you the image. Now you know what it means. And here is point in case. These guys were saying all kinds of weird stuff about weaving and the strings that go in and out. They were just going on and on. And all this word, it's the word for loom. It means something that was woven with a loom. Visheti. Woven with a loom. That's all it means. It's not hard if you know the rules. Knowing the rules is always very important. I'm just throwing that out there. All right, so our next word is be'erev. Oh, in the evening? Well, it seems like, right? All right, well, if you're looking at by the Strong's numbers, hopefully you're not using the Strong's. You're using something like the Brown Driver Brig or the Gesenius, which the Brown Driver Briggs is based on. Just throwing that out there. Because somebody asked me once, why do you use the Gesenius? Why don't you use the Brown Driver Brig? And I said, well, because it's based on the Gesenius. Why, if you got the horse's mouth, why not use it? And he didn't believe me, so he grabbed his BDB and he opened up the introduction and read it out loud and said, I did not know that. I said, well, I did because I read the introduction when I bought mine, and I tossed it on the shelf and said, I'll use the Gesenius. Anywho, so we have the word which would tie to 6154. The Strong's number is 6154. It's to woof. I think we may have had this word already. Weaving by hand is woof, W-O-O-F. It's to weave by hand. So it's used of knitting, crocheting, and even braiding. Anything like that, where you're intertwining the strings, like they were trying to make with the loom word, that's what this word means. All right. It's from the root arav, which is 6148, which is to mix, to interweave, to weave, wince, woof, W-O-O-F, woof. That's an old word we don't use anymore. I'm just throwing that out there. Oh, just spilled that on myself. Whoopsie. Okay, ve'or, that means hide. It's the word for skin. But if you're talking about, in this case, leather, we're going to use the word hide. Then we have melechet. Well, that's works of hide. Properly, it's service, hence work prescribed to anyone, especially of the work of an artisan, the property or wealth of anyone, especially cattle. It's from the root la'ach, which is to send a messenger, to be sent, to it. So this is the work in what's our previous word, or hide. So it's either just hide itself or it's a work in hide. So let's say you have a hide that's been removed from a sheep and that's just laying on the floor somewhere, or you've got the hide of a cow laying on the floor somewhere. You would have had things like this back then. Their tents were made of this stuff. So it's not something that you wear, right? So they're covering that part of it by keeping these two words separate. And then the other part is the work in leather, like a belt or a purse, something that was an artisan put together with leather, using leather. So you need to know those two things are kind of separate. All right, so our translation then is, or from a loom, or with weaving, with linen and with wool, or in hides, or in any work of hide. Right? Because they did it to us again. They broke a sentence up right in the middle. I really don't like this. So let's look at what it said previously, because I've already forgotten. And if there be a contagious mark in a garment, remember how I talked about that being separate? That's why that's important. in a garment of wool, in a garment of leather, linen. Start saying leather, linen. Then it goes on, the verse goes on, or from a loom, or with weaving, with linen, or with wool, or in hides, or in any works of hide. So you see how that all flows together as a single thought. Of the words any works of hide, it does not have to be a garment. For instance, it could be a belt or a strap. Okay, I've really already said that. I should have read that before I went in there and did that again, but just as a reminder. All right, let's move on to 49. It says, V'haya ha'nega yerakrak, o, and that's or, adamdam, starting to sound like the Flintstones and Bam Bam, isn't it? Ba beged, o, that's your or word. Va'or, o, your or word. Va'shiti, o, your or word. Va'erev, o, your or word. Bechal, keli, or, not your or word. Nega, zara'at, hu, ve'hare'a et hakohen. All right, so we have some important words here. Rak. That's a big rock. No, that means rock is green. So it's green. Green, more literally. And then they say it's greenish, maybe yellowish. No, no, it's not. If you're saying green twice, you're saying it is dark green. Maybe you could even say bright green, but it's really more the idea of dark green. Then it says something that we've had already, adamdam, right? So they're saying that means red. And the spelling here, Adam is the word for red. So it says Adam, Dam. And they say, well, that's a conjugation, so that's reason why, blah, 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 blah. Honestly, I think this is the word Adam followed by the word Dam. And they put them together as a conjugation to mean blood red. Either way, you're going to come, if you say red or blood red, you see how that's going to come out the same. It is a dark red. At least it should be. Anywho, so you get that. They put these two words together. See, they didn't do that with rock. It just came out rock. So why didn't they use Adam, right? I'm just thinking that we were making up, at times we make up rules that aren't really rules. Just going to throw that out there. Then we have Vashiti. That's with a loom. Remember that? With a loom. Va'erev. That's a sound-alike word. That's the woof. You got woof. That's weaving. All right. So our translation of this verse is, and I'm going to put in little brackets here in squiggly letters, if the sore is very green or very red in a garment or in a hide or in something, which I'm putting in squiggly lines again, something woven with a loom so that we can understand what they mean, or by crocheting or in any implement of hide, a contagious sore, and the priest sees it. We're stopping right in the middle of a verse again. So let's will you hit computer for me, please? All right. This is what I mean by I put this in square brackets. It's to show you that the word if is not in the sentence. I'm putting it here so that you can understand the sentence in a way it was meant to be understood. I'm not adding to or taking away from the biblical text. I'm just trying to help you understand it in English. I've done the same thing right here. Because they just say, in Hebrew, they're just saying or in loom. You're supposed to know that means something woven with a loom. So I put this here so that you understand it in English the way I understand it in Hebrew. Same thing here. You're going to have the word if, because if it's not, there's going to be a different rule, right? So I'm not changing illuminating the meaning. Here for the word zara'at. I believe that it's the word for contagious, not it's not the word for leprosy in that day and age. All right, so we want to go back to camera 1. All right. Some say the word rock is the yellowish or pale gold color. However, the doubling of the word rock, or it is rock, isn't it? So they took the yod out. Makes the color bright and thus cannot represent a pale color. There's my real argument. Rashi correctly wrote about the doubling of these words, making the color brighter. He was actually right on that issue. I'm not sure where he learned that, like I said, unless at that time there was, in fact, some kind of grammar book in his time. I kind of doubt that. So I'm not sure where he would have picked up on that, other than it becomes kind of obvious if you read the Hebrew, but I know he didn't read Hebrew. So I don't know where he got it, but he was very right. All right, so we'll look at verse 50. Ve'ra'a hakohen et hanaga vehi segir et hanaga shivat yamim. All right, we don't have any new words here, so the translation is, and the priest will look at the mark. Remember, I changed that to mark instead of sore, and quarantine the mark 7 days. The mark, not the person, the mark. Why? Because it's not on the person. You can just, if it's on your clothing, even if the clothing is on you, the mark is on the clothing. But we're going to quarantine the clothing. Why? Because it will get on you if you wear it, right? So we're quarantining the mark, whatever that item is that has that mark in it. Here the priest quarantines the mark, as I just said, not the person. So the things that have the infection in or on them, I should say, are quarantined. The rules for persons being quarantined have already been discussed, so they are not discussed here because we are on a new variable, being inanimate objects, rather than having this infection, if you will, instead of people, right? So we don't need to talk about those rules. There would be no point in it. Okay, here's a whopper of the verse, 51. Ve'ra'a et hanega bayom ha-shevi'i ki fasa hanega, sorry, I'm losing my voice, ba-beged o, your word for or, va-sheti o, your word for or, va-erev o, your word for or, va-or, not your word for or, lechol asher ye'aseh ha'or, not your word for or, li melacha zara'at ma me'eret hanega tamehu. All right? So there's an important word or two here. Fasa, it's a new word. Spread. I don't know. That may not be a new word, but we'll go over it now. To spread, as of say a disease or something. To be propagated, used of a disease, in parentheses, so I kind of jumped the gun there. The primary idea being a part in spreading out, right? So to spread, it's what you would think it means. Then we have, lost my mouse here. Aha nega. Okay, but Rob, we've already had nega. And you pronounce it like 12 different ways. Yeah, that's the way this word goes. Okay. The mark instead of just the word mark. They've added the definite article to it, or maybe they've added the hey for he pa'el or he feel or something like that. Could be. This is that strike, that blow. It's the tear in the skin. In this case, it's going to be the idea of tear is going to come with this. This is going to be something that is eating away at leather and eating away at linen and eating away at wool. There's going to be a tearing, not necessarily a rip, but if it's eating up the material, you understand how that would be tearing, right? So don't think of it as somebody ripped it in half or something like that. It may not even look like a tear. Say some of the wool has fallen out. Some of the, maybe there's kind of a line running through it where there's just kind of a, what's the word I want to use? Because tear indicates that there's, two different pieces, but the tear may not go all the way through. You know what I'm saying? I hope you do. It's from the root naga, and we've already been through that, so I don't think we need to do that. But here's a really important word, ma me'eret. That's from bitter or from bitterness. It's to be bitter or sour, properly to make bitter, hence to cause bitter pain. That's a use, not not part of the meaning. So here's my translation, and let's back up and read the other parts since they stopped in halfway through a verse. I'm gonna have to change this up. I really don't like this starting and stopping in the middle of a verse. I don't like it at all. So the verse starts off in verse 50, and the priest will look at the mark and quarantine the mark 7 days. And okay, well, we didn't do that. We didn't do what I thought we did. I just didn't make it clear to myself. So 51 would be a good place to start a new verse. And looks at the mark, because we're assuming that he has come back, and looks at the mark on the 7th day. Now we know he's coming back. If it has spread in the garment or to that which was made, this is one of those things in parentheses, with a loom or by crocheting or in a hide from any occupation of hide work, it is a bitterly contagious mark. It is unclean. Will you go back to the computer, please? I want you to be able to see this because I want you to see what I did. I've got my little square brackets. I've got my squiggly letters in all this. This is not part of the Hebrew text. But if you're going to understand in English that which was said in Hebrew, I need to do this because what this says helps you to understand the Hebrew. It does not change the Hebrew. It makes the Hebrew clear. And this stuff has to be done or you're never. So it doesn't change the meaning, which is the mandate from God about, you can switch back to me. The mandate from God to not add to or take away from the Bible does not mean that you cannot add to or take away words that weren't there in a new language. Actually, you would be taking away. If I don't add these words, you're not going to understand what was said. That would be taking away from what God told. That would be a violation of that command. So what I've done is not violate that command. I'm not going in here and adding a bunch of stuff that doesn't belong there. One, when I do add something, I'm letting you know that I've added something. And two, I'm not adding what I've added has not changed the meaning in any way. It has only clarified it. That is acceptable. Does not break God's law. Some of the sages use the word pricking instead of bitter or painful, though some use bitter, some use painful. But some of them use pricking. I think because the words silon ma me'ir are so often translated as pricking briar. But this is wrong. The words mean painful briar. They are painful when someone is pricked by one. You see what I'm saying? The result of the briar becomes the meaning of the briar, and that's not right. I hope you understand. So this, what they're saying here is that this is a bitter contagion. This is highly contagious. It has jumped from a human to inanimate objects, which also means, no doubt, that it can go from those inanimate objects to other humans. So this is very contagious. Which you got an example. We had the COVID thing, right? So you start off with what they call it, COVID-19. And then you had the Delta variants, and now you have the Omicron variant. And the thing to know about the Omicron is that it has shifted. The first two variants hit you in the lungs. At least the first one did. I'm not sure about the Delta. I didn't hear about that one. But now that we're in Omicron, it has moved from the lung up into the bronchial, or not, that's not right, because that's bronchial, but up here in the throat, right? The reason why there's so many more getting it is because once it reaches the throat, it becomes a bitter contagion. It becomes very highly contagious. But the beauty of the virus itself, as it is obviously different from what we're talking about, is that when the virus goes up into the throat and becomes so highly contagious, it has at that point lost most of its effectiveness in harming. Now, yeah, it can still make you feel like you've been run over by a Mack truck, and it may even get you hospitalized, but virtually no one that I know of has actually died from it. They were saying there early on that people had died from it, and then they had to admit that that wasn't true. They were conflating somebody coming in with a heart attack who happened to have COVID as dying from COVID. They got caught again. So as far as I know, no one's actually died from Omicron. And the next variant after Omicron, we now know, will be weaker than Omicron. Do you follow what I'm saying? So it may, though Omicron is a bitter contagion because it's so easily transmissible, it's getting less and less and less dangerous. It's why Britain announced last week that all government intervention in the COVID thing has been dropped. There are no mask mandates, no shot mandates, no any of that. They decided to drop it because they now have the science behind it and know that it's no longer something worth the government being a part of. So good for them. Some of the sages use the word pricking. I started on that. Instead of bitter or painful. Okay, I already said that. The words mean, I already said all that. Let's move on. I rolled my little rolling ball backwards and got lost there. All right, let's look at 52. Ve'saref et ha-beged o, that's your word, or, et ha-shiti o, word, or, et ha-erev ba-zemer o, which means or, va-pishtim o, which means or, et kol keli ha-or, does not mean or, asher yiyeh vo hanega ki zaraat ma'meret hi ba'esh tisareth. I think the reason why I keep doing this or thing is because you need to understand that it's this or that. It's not a combination of all the above. So this is important. That's because it's highly contagious. If it's just a little here, a little there, it counts. Where previously it had to be the combination of quite a few things, if you remember. All right, so the first important word here is vesareth, and burn. It's to suck in, to absorb, to drink in, to swallow down, to absorb with fire, i.e. to burn, to consume, because it's like the fire is drinking down whatever it's burning, right? So remember, it's a primitive language, and primitive languages use one word for a lot of different things. And so that's fire. It looks like it's dancing, so it's used that word is used of dancing. And it looks like it's consuming, so it's used of consuming or eating, if you will, though it's not real common. It gets translated as, the fire ate the land, or the fire ate the house, or whatever. I mean, you'll see things like that, but it's more English than Hebrew. So then our next word is ba-zemer. That's it, the word for wool, if you recall, perhaps so called from its being shorn off. It's from the root zamar, which is to cut off. That's all that means. Then ba'esh, that's that word esh, so it's with fire, that it imitates the sound of fire. So something's going to be burned in fire, obviously. And then it says, Tisaref, you will burn it. Burn in fire, you will burn it. You hear what's happening here? So the translation is, and I left out my R because my R doesn't work on my computer very often. So, and burn the garment. Wanted to share that with you. And burn the garment, or that which was made with a loom, or by weaving, or the wool, or the linen, or any implement of hide in which the bitterly contagious mark is in. Burn it with fire, you will burn it. So it's this or that or that or this, and on it goes. It doesn't make any difference what it is. If it has that bitter contagion in it, now it's going to be burned with fire. Even Ezra poses an interesting but speculative reason why wool and linen are mentioned while other fabrics were not. He proposed that this condition only occurred in these two fabrics. I think it's interesting, but I'm pretty sure he's wrong. All right. I wasn't sure I saw that flash or not. I got to keep moving because we got to get through to the end this week. 53 says, Ve'im yir'eh ha'kohen vehine lo fasa ha'nega babeged o, your word for or, va'sheti o, your word for or, va'erev o, bechol keli or. So remember, fasa, spread, very, very important that we understand that. So our translation, since we don't really have any new words here, is, but if the priest looks and behold, the mark has not spread. Remember, that's what was going on in the last one. The mark is spread. But if it hasn't spread in a garment, or that which was made with a loom, or whatever was woven, or in any implement of hide, ending in the middle of a sentence again. It goes on in 54 to say, Ve'ziva ha'kohen ve'chibsu et asher bo ha'naga ve'hi se giru shivat yamim shenit. Now we have this word here, Ve'ziva. Ziva, that's the name of my granddaughter, which here with the Bob added to the front, that's and command. It's to set up, to constitute, to appoint. Anyone do anything, to decree, to determine, to give a command. Ve'chibsu, and wash they. That's that word as the treading and the trampling, because back in the day, that's how they would get their clothes wet, and they would lay them down on a rock and trample on them, or they would beat them with a rock. I've actually seen that done on TV, but I don't know if it was accurate because, you know, Hollywood doesn't really worry too much about accuracy. I watched this TV show, and I won't talk about who it was, but my friends were telling me, oh, they got all these scholars, and they're doing I think is it the New Testament? Yeah, it's the New Testament, but it's supposed to be through the eyes of Jews. And so I went and I watched it, a couple of episodes, and not only were the Jews wearing the wrong clothing, but they were very much saying the wrong things. I was just like, wow. The only thing they forgot to do was consult a Jew. There's all these Catholic people and stuff like that. They're consultants and not a Jew in the bunch. Wow. Okay. But hey, its accuracy was incredible. All right. So we had the word for command. Then we have vechibsu, which is in the word for washing. All right. Those are two important words. So our translation, the priest will command that which had a mark to be washed and quarantine it a second 7 days. So we've gone from the first 7-day period to a second 7-day period for a total of 14 days that we're trying to find out if this is going to be contagious. Because it just said that in this particular case, it doesn't appear to have spread, right? So if it's not spreading, it may or may not be contagious. We're going to give it another 7 days. Let's just make sure. It's important. Don't want to get anyone sick here. So verse 45 or 55, rather. Sorry. Ve'ra'a hakohen hare hu kabes et hanega ve'hine lo hafach hanega et eno ve'hanega lo fasa tame hu ba'esh tis refenu bechetet hi bekarachto o, your word for or, vegamachto. So, our first word is hafach. That's to turn. That's to do what I just did. I'd be going this way, and then I turn that way. Got it? That's a hard one, huh? Eno. That's his eyes, we would say. In Hebrew, that's literally I, he, or eyes, he, but it's his eyes. Is that okay? Pechetet. I have the word pitted because that's the word that really makes sense here. As if a lower place, a depression. It's from the root pachat. It's one of these ways so we can know what this word means. It is, if you're looking in your Jacinius, you're going to have to look on page 672, and it's between numbers 63, 53, and 63, 54. It has no number. But it's a pit, often used as a figure of destruction. But pitted, or pit, or pitted, that's what this word means. All right, so the translation is, and the priest will look at the mark after it has been washed, and behold, if there has been no change, then he. Remember that? That means if there has been no change in his opinion, and the mark has not spread, it is unclean. They shall burn it with fire, if pitted, with smoothness, or with a bare spot. It is unclean, and they will burn it with fire if it is pitted with smoothness or with a bare spot. Like say the parts of the wool have dropped out, or parts of the fabric have frayed away or missing. You've seen cloth like that, right? Where there's pitted places in it. That's what we're talking about. So if it has that additional pitted or smoothness, then it's unclean. You can't just say that the first part of it makes it unclean because it doesn't. So this is in the opinion of the priest. Another good example of why the Jews have really missed the mark. I say the Jews, I'm a Jew. We Jews, I guess I'm going to throw myself in there, have really missed the mark by not having priests. We should still have priests. I don't care if we have a temple or not. We should still have priests. And by the way, what would be so wrong with building a temple here and there and everywhere we're allowed to build them? I don't know. Anyway, I mean, you could say it's not the temple. Okay, I'll be all right with that. Wouldn't it be nice to have one of those so that the priests could do their job? Just saying. Of the words, the mark is not spread, it is unclean. Rashi wrote that the reason why the item is still unclean is because the color has not changed. Well, it says, in his opinion, there was no change. He is close, but the text tells us that there is no change, which would include the lack of change in the color, but is not limited to it. The reason will also include the fact that the infected area is still infected. Pseudo-Jonathan, Rashi, and Sifra all wrote about the mark appearing deep in the fabric. Maybe you could say that about leather, but really? Deep in the fabric? Fabric? How thick was that stuff back then? Ibn Ezra, Rashban, Sa'adiah, all no doubt others, and no doubt others, wrote that this mark made people unhealthy and feel weak. Wait, what? I think they missed the fact that we're talking about inanimate objects. But maybe they're talking about those things touching you would do that. I don't know. If that wasn't bad enough, they all use the word tear instead of pitted. I guess they figured the material was technically torn if it was pitted. Maybe trying to give them some help here. If pitted, of the words if pitted, there is some redemption for Rashi in that he correctly wrote that the Hebrew word meant pit. Just trying to help him out a little. All right, 56. Oh, man, I'm letting myself run out of time. Because we've got, I think, 59 in here, don't we? And these are long. All right, it says, Ve'im ra'ah ha'kohen v'hine keha ha'nega ha'hare hu kabes oto ve'karo oto min ha'beged o, which means or, min ha'or, which does not. This followed by o, which does mean or. Min ha'shiti o, which means or. Min ha'erev. So we have a word here, keha, which means dark. But it's the idea of the candle is going out. It's becoming faint. It's becoming weak. It's running out of fuel, so it's getting dark. That's where they get that idea for dark. But it's of the weakness and of the dimming is more the idea. So the dimming of color. Ha-kabes, that wash, that's that treading and all that kind of stuff. And then we have ve-kara, which is, and tears, to bend, to tear asunder as garments, used of sorrow and stuff like that. So our translation. But if the priest looks and behold, the mark has diminished after it was washed, he will tear, what will he tear? The spot that has diminished. He will tear it from the garment or from the hide or from that which was made with a loom or woven. Here's my note. Here, the mark is not spreading and is obviously dying. It has diminished. Thus, the bad spot is torn away and the rest can be saved. Score one for Rashi. He correctly pointed out that only the bad spot was to be torn away from and burned. He got that right, and that's a big thing because most of the people were disagreeing with him. And so he stood up for himself, and he was right. All right, 57. Ve'im te ra'e od ba'beged o va'sheti sheti. O, your word for or, we've had it twice now. Va'erev o, or again, bechal, sorry. Keli, or, not the word for or. Parachat, hiv ba'esh, tisrefenu et asher bo hanaga. So, keli, that's the word for vessel. It's an implement. It's what is made or prepared. Any utensil, a vessel, it could even be clothing, or at least part of the clothing, like a belt or something. All right, so then we have another important word that we've already had, but it's important to bring up again. Po-rahat. That's the breakout. Remember, that's the breakout, and it's begun to spread out. All right, so our translation. But if he, speaking of the priest, but if he sees that the garment or that which was made with a loom or woven or in any implement of hide has broken out, it will be burned with fire because the mark was still in it. Here the mark has spread after it was washed, and now the entire item must be completely burned. And I'm saying that because there are those who disagree with that. I don't know why. Score one for Rashi. He did a good job here. He correctly pointed out that only the entire item was to be torn away and burned. However, that only the entire item... I think only was supposed to not be there, that the entire item was to be torn. Torn? Rashi wrote that the whole thing was supposed to be burned. However, even Ezra loses a point here. You know, he's one of my favorites. He loses a point here because he wrote that only part of the thing had to be burned. Ay, ay, ay. All right, verse 38 says, Ve ha beged, o, is your word for or. Ha shati, o, your word for or. Ha erev, o, your word for or. Kol keli ha or, not your word for or. Asher te chades, vesar mehem, ha naga, ve chubas, or bus, bas. Ve chubas, no, bas. Ve chubas, good Lord. Shenit ve taher. Trying to fix my tongue. Sorry about that. And whoop, lost my usage here. I wonder why I said that. It turned back from the mark. We start with vesar, which we've already had. And that's that word to turn. Turn. No, just kidding. But this is to return to. You had something and it went away and now it returns. So to return, or you bought something, you didn't like it, so you returned. Right? But it's to turn back on itself. Remember that earlier, talking about if someone says one thing and then says another, they're turning back on the words, so it's those type of things. So the translation, and the garment or that which was made with a loom or woven or any implement of hide that you wash and the mark turns away, you will wash them a second time and they will be clean. So remember, this last one is, it didn't turn away. It didn't diminish. It didn't get dim. It looks as bad or maybe worse than it did before. So you burn the whole thing. But now it's saying, but on the other hand, if the mark, if you wash and the mark turns away, in other words, it does diminish. It seems to be going away, or maybe went all the way away. It's clean. You don't have to burn it. Rashi saw the second washing as a ritual immersion, while even Ezra did not. However, the previous verses dealt with the items that were damaged. This verse is not. This is what we do when the mark breaks out. The item is cleansed, and is fine. That would mean that Rashi may be right, while as to why we wash it again. He may be right. It doesn't say, though. You got to realize that when we start trying to say, well, the reason why, that's all speculation. Unless God lays it out, we're just kind of winging it. All right. 59, and I do think this is our last one. All right. Zot, I say all right because we get to start a new chapter next week. Zot, I'm trying to cover for what I just said. Torah nega zaraat beged ha zemer, o, your word for or, ha pishtim, o, your word for or, ha sheti, o, your word for or, ha erev, o, your word for or, kol keli, or, not your word for or, letaharo, o, your word for or, letamo. Wow. All right, that was something. So now we have Torah. You realize it's Torah in plural, right? And I used to do this. I know I've told you guys this before, but it's been a while. I used to, when I was traveling around the country teaching, I would ask the question. I would say, who wants to answer this strict question? Of course, every hand in the room would go up. And I said, what is the Hebrew word for law? And of course, every hand in the room would stay up. And everybody, ooh, pick me, pick me. And so I'd pick just somebody at random. And they would say, Torah. I was like, I told you it was a trick question, people. Torah is not the word for law. It is a very, very wrong translation of Torah. Torah means instruction. Mishpat, mitzvah. There's lots of words we can use for law, but Torah is not one of them. The Torah is the instruction on how we live out the law. So this is instructions in plural is all we really need to know. And then we have zara'at. Remember, we've decided to use the word contagious here, or contagion, either way. very workable, makes it make sense. I'm going to take this to a doctor and have her look it over, and hopefully she will, and get her opinion on what word I should use, because I think I'm looking for a medical word, and I'm not a medical doctor, so I need to go to somebody who is. All right, so our next important word here is letahal, to clean he, literally. It's to make something shiny, to make it bright. You know, you wash your car and it's all nice and shiny. There's your idea. Then letamo, that's literally to unclean he. To be or become unclean, to be polluted. You know what that means. It's basically you're in violation of the Torah in some way. All right, sorry, is our translation. This is the instruction, and I put in square brackets, relating to, in squiggly letters, so that you know those words weren't there, but this will help you understand what it says in Hebrew. This is the instruction relating to the contagious mark in garments of wool or linen, or that which was made with a loom or woven, or any implement of hide, concerning its purity or impurity. And thus, this concludes our journey through chapter 13. Shalom v'shalom, y'all.
בעברית, היהווה ואיש מרעך, יאר יהווה עליך ויהונך, יישא יהווה פניו אליך וישם לך shalom. And in English, may Yahweh cause you to lie down so that you may rest. May he touch and caress you. May he prepare you for what is ahead. May he watch over you. May he keep you from harm. May he cause goodness to grow in you and take away the bad. May he arrange your life and cause you to flourish. May he cheer you up and gladden your heart. May he cause his light to shine through you. May he show you tenderness, favor, and love in his presence. May he show you kindness and be delicate towards you. May he show you his generosity, mercy, compassion, and desire for you as it comes forth from the depths of his soul. May he lift you out of your pit and deliver you from the things that hold you prisoner. May he draw you to his chest and cast his eyes on yours. May he show you his love and desire for you as he cradles you in his arms. May he bear your punishment and pardon you of your sin. May he take you for his bride. May he establish a foundation in you. May he place his name on your heart and mind and make your body his temple. May you be his treasure. May you always be on his mind. May he draw you near and comfort you when you are afraid. May he assure you there is nothing to fear because he is with you. May you and all that concerns you be at peace because he is your friend. Amen.